joining us today for another episode of What's Your Why Wednesday. Today, I am joined by the lovely Heather Crockett. She is the Vice President of Business Development at True Concept Title. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, most of us in the mortgage and real estate industry accidentally found our way into this amazing industry, but we stay because it's tied to our personal and professional why. So at this time, Heather, I would love to hear, please share with us, what is your why?
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Laura. So I've been doing a lot of like soul searching and reshaping my thoughts and my patterns lately. So this is a different answer that I would have given you probably a month ago even. But my overarching why is making the most out of my dash.
Oh, I know that dash. I know what you're speaking of. Yes.
And I know it's a very broad why, but for right now, like the season I'm in my life and the mindset I'm in my life, that it's a good why for me. I mean, I have goals within that dash, right? So would you like me to elaborate on the dash? Maybe other people don't know.
Please share, because there may be people that don't know what we're speaking of.
Right. Yeah. So the dash is the actual dash that's in between your date of birth and date of death, right? Which are out of your control, really, and etched in stone, but making the most out of that time that you have here. So like I said, I have goals within that overarching dash, like, setting a great example for my son, so that he can then make the most of his dash, right? Creating a brand, that's a household name, that's a goal. And to live a fulfilled retirement with my husband and travel in that retirement, so those are some goals within that overarching why, but the dash is my why.
So for everyone listening, we highly recommend that you Google the dash. There is a poem that goes with it. It's very touching. It is definitely something that everyone should read and remember. Because yes, I think we all lose sight sometimes in our busyness of time, that we realize that we all have a second date that's going to happen. And like you said, it's beyond our control. It is not something that we can. So all we can do is make the most and the biggest impact, positive impact that we can have within that time frame. Why in the last month or so is this mind shift that you're, really identifying and taking a look at that?
So I've actually been working with, do you remember Inga Mascoon, who we had on the Women's Committee Live webinar? So yeah, I've been working a lot with her. She's just fabulous, honestly.
Wonderful.
And yeah, she's walking me through some things, just growth, just personal growth stuff that, yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, that's great. Anytime that you can be inspired to really have that perspective, new perspective in life, is fabulous. So I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So my next question, and this is my most favorite, I love this part, is, sometimes we were just speaking about it. We get caught up in the minutia of our day-to-day and the things that we do, especially in our industry, because we're always chasing, right? We're always chasing the end of the month, or we're always chasing that next goal, or we're always chasing that next thing. And sometimes we don't realize the monumental impact that we make on others, whether it's our team, whether it's our partners we work with, whether it's the families that we serve. So I love to take a moment and hear from our guests. Give us a story of one of those times when you really just realized that impact that you have on the world.
So, when I got into this, I'm like, title, I'm like, what? Like, we're not dealing necessarily direct to consumer, at least on not on that more personal level, like the realtors are and the lenders are a lot of times, right? We're very much like in the background. But I had a man come up to me at an event that I was at. It was a semi-work event, I guess you could call it that. It was like more of a casual work event. And he said to me, he says, "You're with a title company?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "I have a story for you." I said, "Okay, great." So he said the first house that him and his wife bought was from a family member. And when they sat down at the closing table, he actually argued about the cost of title insurance and that he had to purchase it. Because the house had, he was purchasing from his family. He trusted them. He didn't see the need for it, right? He actually called it a non-essential that he shouldn't have to buy it. So fast forward to the second house that he and his wife bought. They bought it from an investor. It was a flip. And he said about 4 months down the road, he got a knock on the door. And the person at the door said, "You owe us $75,000. And he was like, "Oh, good news. I do not owe you $75,000. Let me go get my paperwork and give you a number to call my title insurance company."
Oh, wow.
So, I had never heard, personally, I'd never heard a story like that. So I was like, oh, that's great. That is definitely why you need title insurance. And now right? Because the first time he argued about it, he didn't want to pay it. So
look at that. I love that story. And it is true, right? Sometimes you just don't, like, it's anything, right? What I'm trying to remember, I just heard this the other day where somebody said it's insurance. It shouldn't be called insurance. It should be like somebody had a different name for it because it's really protecting you against something bad, right? So it's not really like they should change the name into something of that protection. And that's so wonderful, that story, to see someone that actually said, "Nope, wait a minute, I've got that protection. I've got that coverage. I did this, and no, this is exactly the reason why." So yes, that is the impact that we make. Yes. Absolutely. All right. So Heather, how long have you been doing this?
2 years.
Okay, that's right. You started during COVID, right?
I did.
Yes.
Actually, interesting time for all of us.
Yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about you coming into the industry.
So I had worked in a completely different industry for 15 years in the corporate world, and COVID hit, and they furloughed, I think about 7,000 of us, and it was a big number. And then a couple of months later, they, laid most of us off. But about an hour after I got furloughed, my brother-in-law called me. It's a family-owned and operated company. My brother-in-law called me and he said, "Hey, I hear you have some extra time on your hands." I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. I'd always worked my entire life as young as I could start babysitting and then get my working papers, right? When I was 13 or 14, whenever it was. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do have some extra time on my hands. Of course, what I said to him at the time was, I mean, who knew that COVID would last what seems like forever now?
Yeah, you're thinking, by the summer we'll be good, right?
That's what I said. I said, yeah, I'll do whatever you need me to do, until I go back to work. I mean, I just thought I'd be going back to work. I guess the joke's on me because here I am, 2 years later. But it's been great, and especially working with the family, because now, we didn't talk as much before. Now we talk more, and I see the kids more, my nieces and nephews. So, it's connected us more. So it's great.
Absolutely. There is nothing like working with family. I know a lot of people can't do it, but I can tell you with, working with my children, I always say to other parents, you're missing out on the connection that I have with my children because I can see them in a professional setting. And a lot of times you don't have that ability to see family members, whether it's your children, whether it's your brothers and sisters or whoever it is. So having that joy, if you can get along, not everyone can work together,
right?
But if you can get along and separate the work and the personal, it is a relationship that is very special. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not for everybody. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's definitely not for everybody. And it's hard. It's hard. You know, there's no two ways about it. It's hard enough,
Yeah.
you know, working for people that you don't know.
Yeah.
So, or
Yes,
working with people that
there
you don't know.
definitely you have to have that separation because it could
Yeah.
get complicated.
Yes.
That's for sure. All right. So with that, you
Mhm.
came in during COVID. Obviously, you flourished, and for everyone out there, Heather is part of the New Jersey MBA Women's Committee
Mhm.
with me. So we've grown to get to know each other over these last couple of years. And you're in it. You're in the thick of
I'm in
things.
it.
I mean, you're at the conferences. You're speaking to people. You're dealing with clients. You're in it. Okay.
Mhm.
So now I'd love to hear, a couple years later, what advice would you give to someone that's newer to the industry, right? What did you learn, right? What lessons do you wish someone would have warned you about? Or what are some advice that you would give now that you're a little further into this?
So I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is be ready for the wild roller coaster ride, right? On a lot of different levels, but mostly what I'm talking about is when I got into it, it was super busy times, right? And now not so much. It's slowed down quite a bit, right? So take the busy times, take it while you can get it, but prepare yourself for the bad times when it's not so busy. I mean, that's in every way, financially, emotionally, you know, definitely, I think more so financially, because there's so many people, right? We see survey after survey that so many people live paycheck to paycheck. And so take those busy times and put money to the side because those busy times are not going to last. Yeah, so that's a big one. If you're committed for the long haul, just like I said, plan for the worst. And I always like to stay positive, but like I said, those busy times are not going to last. The bad times aren't going to last either. So that's the good news. It's a roller coaster ride, and a lot of it depends on the economy, which is something that you can't control. So just plan for it.
That is correct. And very good advice. Very good advice. And that's the thing. You said it. The good times don't last forever, but also the bad times don't either. So you have to try to keep yourself even. So when those great times are here, like you said, put aside, because then when it levels, right? You have that savings, you have that to the side, and try to live within the means of not the highest times. Yeah. you don't want to have your, that to be your gauge. Be able to have it the more stable, consistent time. But it's a great industry. We know how fabulous and how lucky we are, and we can have a long-standing career, but you are going to have cycles, like you said, depending on outside forces, depending on what's happening. And of course, the whole pandemic, hopefully that's a once in a lifetime situation. Hopefully none of us will ever see anything like that. That was an anomaly. We're never, I don't anticipate we're going to see something like that, but now we can level off. So great advice. Thank you for that. Well, Heather, we wish you all the best always. Thank you so much for sharing your why with all of us. Be well.
Thank you, Laura.